Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. I am your host, Jim Kelgar. That's right, Jim with two M's. Why? I don't know, but it's just one of those mysteries that remains unexplained. Go figure. Anyhow, folks, it's a pleasure to see all of you. It feels like it's been forever, but it's only been well, it's been about a month, maybe a little less than a month or so since we've been on with the Soul of the Unexplained. And normally, my good friend, my brother from another mother, and co-creator and co-host of the Soul of the Unexplained, Mr. Roger Stokes, would be here with me this evening. But regrettably, Roger has fallen ill again and is unable to join me for this little update that we're doing here this evening. But hope that you all will join me in wishing Roger the absolute very best. And I can tell you, folks, he could certainly use as many positive vibes and positive wishes and prayers on his behalf, because we could all use a little bit of that goodness in our lives. But Roger, if there's ever anybody that deserved a little extra, I think I can make a pretty good case that that would be Mr. Roger Stokes. So, Roger, buddy, we certainly miss you. Wish you were here with us this evening, and we want you to start feeling better very soon. So, just hang in there, pal. We're all pulling for you. So, joining me this evening is, of course, my absolute favorite Denver Broncos fan, my fellow bandmate and hitchhiker, fellow music lover, and just all around awesome guy, the greatest bass player to ever play on stage at PhenomeCon 2024 and 2025, Mr. John Nyberger. How are you, John?
Doing great. Thank you, sir. That's kind of a funny introduction, but I guess it's technically true, right? Which is the best kind of true.
Every damn word of it, you betcha. So John, we're just going to kind of not so much. Well, okay, we are going to shoot from the hip because that's what we do best, right? But
Correct.
we're just going to kind of talk about a couple of topics and just riff on a few things and just have a little bit of fun. And we'll come back before too awful long and do another proper proper episode of the podcast here. But certainly would love to wish everybody a very happy spring. Hope you guys are all enjoying a little bit of good weather. And John, I don't know how things have been where you are, but here in the great state of Utah, this past week we had gorgeous 70-degree weather with sunny skies, and it was like beautiful. And then today, 45 degrees and raining, and we're supposed to get snow 2 days next week. So springtime in the Rockies, right?
Yep. Same here. It's weird weather. It was almost 80 a couple of days ago. It was nice earlier today. I was just looking. It's raining and 42 degrees
Ooh,
with a low of 36 tonight. Yeah. So
yeah.
it's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, that crazy weather stuff. If you don't like the weather, just give it 5 minutes.
Yep. A couple of days ago, we had a 40-degree swing here from when I woke up to like early afternoon.
Wow, that's insane. And you're up at pretty high elevation. In fact, I think you're higher elevation than I am here in Salt Lake. Where I'm at, we're at about just under 4,200, maybe 4,300 feet above sea level.
Dude,
You're
how high are we? You know how high we are.
I'm not going to say it because I'm a
We're a
Raider fan.
mile high.
Yeah. Rocky Mountain High, right?
That's
Anyhow,
right.
so folks, we thought that we'd start off today having a little bit of fun. We got some news. I don't know if we shared it during the last episode, but speaking of Hitchhiker, the band that John and I are fortunate enough to play in with Dr. Travis Taylor, Mr. Jay Stratton, Mr. Micah Hanks, and the one and only Caleb Hanks. Of course, Hitchhiker the band. We are coming back to PhenomeCon for 2025, and we are once again going to be closing up the conference with a live performance on Saturday, the final night of PhenomeCon 2025 in Vernal, Utah. And I don't know about you, John, but I already love PhenomeCon to begin with, but getting to perform again on stage at PhenomeCon, just such a good time last year. So enjoyed every bit of it. Crazy as it was at
Yes.
times,
Yes.
but we wouldn't have it any other way, would we? That's kind
No,
of the
no.
hitchhiker way, right?
It was pure chaos, and we didn't know what was going on, and we couldn't hear each other, and everyone had a blast.
Absolute blast. Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, John, you actually, Hitchhiker actually played a gig just a couple of weeks ago,
Yep.
minus one member.
Minus one very important member,
I wonder who
our
that
keyboard
was.
player, Jim.
Yes. So
Yeah.
tell us a little about the how was the show? What was it like?
It was pretty fun. Again, it felt impromptu, a little bit of chaos. Didn't really know what we were doing, trying to figure out what's going on. Kind of not quite the last minute, we heard that Travis wasn't going to be able to make it, and it was his idea, which made it kind of funny. Like, all right, what songs are we going to even be doing if our lead singer isn't going to be there? Now we're looking at Micah and Caleb singing all the songs, which means maybe we're picking entirely different songs.
My money's on you to be a singer. You know, at some point,
I can
you know,
sing bass.
you're going to be picking up that microphone someday.
I might. I
I
might.
want to be there when that happens.
I might. But it was so what ended up happening was part of the fun of the trip were the tornadoes and
Oh wow.
the crazy weather. Yeah, yeah. I think I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning the first night we were there because the thunder was so loud you couldn't sleep. Like it was shaking the house we were staying in. It was
Mm.
crazy. Um, and But because of the bad weather, the events that Dr. Travis Taylor had to go to got rescheduled. So it turns out he was able to make it. So yeah, he came to it. We had a rehearsal for a few hours and did mostly song with it. I think maybe three exceptions. We did songs we did from PhenomeCon, a selection of those songs from last year.
Hmm.
And we had rented out a private room at this restaurant, and we had tables and some catered food, and it was pretty great. It was a lot of fun.
So I have to ask, did you guys go to the place that had the guacamole?
No, that's the one place we didn't go. We went to the other. Okay, so for the people listening that don't know, when we're out there in the Huntsville area visiting Jay and Michelle, we eat a lot of Mexican food, and we like it. And
We
they have some
love
great,
it.
yeah, they have some great Mexican food there. So one night we would be at one place. The next night we're at the second place. The next day we're at a third place. The third place is where Jim had his religious experience with some guacamole. He had tears running down. I saw a look of a lifetime of regret form on his face that he you know was missing out on
I
guacamole his whole life.
I have no recollection, Senator. I respectfully invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Yet for whatever reason, we didn't go to that one, but we went to the other two places multiple times. Like I
Oh,
was
cool.
the at one of them, I think three times, and at the other one
Wow.
twice. Yeah, we ate a lot of Mexican food place.
You know, that's
We ate a lot of Mexican food. I mean, it
and
was
and and
so
anybody that knows me knows that my favorite food of all time is tacos. And I'm here to tell you folks, okay, I lived in California for 2 years. I've lived in Utah for 30 years. I lived in Arizona for a period of time. So I know really good authentic Mexican food. And if you had told me prior to a year ago that I would experience hands down the best Mexican food I've ever had in my life. Okay. In Alabama, of all places, I mean, when you say Alabama, Mexican food is not really on the radar, at least for somebody like me. But oh my gosh,
yeah, I
uh,
had no idea.
and just one more reason why I just I love hanging out with the guys in Hitchhiker and the Stratons because we're all such big fans of Mexican food and yeah, so
Oh,
many good experiences there with
it,
the
dude, right as
restaurants there.
when I was leaving this time, because of the way it worked out, Caleb and Micah took off going one way out of town, and I was going through town a different way that was going right past where Jay and Michelle and their family were having lunch at a pizza place.
Oh.
I swung by there and had a slice of pizza there.
Hmm.
Freaking good, dude. It was
Oh,
so good. And
don't.
the slices, imagine ordering like a large pizza from Domino's or Pizza Hut.
Uh-huh.
I swear to God, that was one slice from this place. It was
Okay.
massive. I cut up my
You're
slice
you're
into
talk
slices. It was crazy.
you are talking to a native New Yorker here. Okay, so I know pizza, and I'm like when it comes to Italian food, I've got standards. It's like when you hear Texans talk about, real barbecue can't be had outside of
Mhm.
Texas, right? Well, for New Yorkers and people from New Jersey, maybe I guess, we kind of take pride in Italian food. I mean, I grew up in a
Yep.
in a in a part of New York that had a really high Sicilian immigrant population. So, I had such great, authentic Italian cuisine around me all the time. So, uh, but now that you're telling me that you had an experience like that, because of my experience with the Mexican food last year, I'm gonna have to believe you at your word that they
And,
do pizza right there
and
because
I'm a pizza snob. I
oh,
come
so am
down on
I.
pizza,
So am I.
right? And I also, when it comes to the great Chicago versus Brooklyn / New York style pizza, I'm a New York style guy as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
And trust me when I say you would love that pizza. You would like it a lot. So
Good.
one more
Well,
place we will have to try out.
challenge accepted. Right on.
Yeah,
So yeah, tell me so enough about food for now because I'm getting hungry again.
yeah, me
But
too.
tell us a little about the performance. What was some of the songs? Any new songs that you guys did or
We just they threw in a few new ones right at the last minute. God, what were they? Uh, Roadhouse Blues. Already
Mhm.
said was one of them. Oh, the fun one. I don't know if if it went off as well as Travis wanted or imagined it might, but we kind of did a lounge jazz version of Love Gun by Kiss.
No way.
I swear to God. That was entirely not my intention. And that resulted because during rehearsal, Travis and Micah kept going off on tangents, leaving, and of course, Caleb knows all the same songs that they do. So the three of them would be playing. Meanwhile, Jay and I would be looking at each other like, what in the hell song is this even? We don't know what this is. Occasionally, I would try to play along, and other times, Jay and I would just go sit down. We're supposed to be rehearsing, right?
Right.
And I would
Yeah.
just be sitting down going, they don't need us. We're going to go sit down, you know. Like
Oh,
the top of my head now, I can't think of there was a couple others. But anyway, yeah, it was mostly these songs that we did. Like I think we did like Hell's Bells,
uh-huh.
even. I think Highway to Hell.
Man in the Box. Did you guys pull that
We
one
did,
off?
yes, we did both of the Alice in Chains songs,
Nice. Nice.
Down in a Hole and Man in a Box. We did Don't Tell Me You Love Me, Wanted Dead or Alive. Um, God, right now it's slipping my mind what we did, but I mean it was mostly songs we did from, you know,
PhenomeCon. Cool.
Mama. But it was
That's
it was a lot of fun. We did of course Simple Man, Sweet Home Alabama. That was a lot of fun. Doing that in Alabama is a kind of a different experience.
oh gosh, yeah, that's I can only
I
imagine.
enjoyed it.
That song for people that don't know, last year at PhenomeCon that we did not rehearse Sweet Home Alabama at all. And bear in mind, folks, that last year PhenomeCon was only the second time that this current line of Hitchhiker had played together. We did one rehearsal in August of last year in Alabama together as a band, and Sweet Alabama was not on the set list of the playlist of songs that we rehearsed in August when we got together. But yet, on stage at PhenomeCon, it was like everybody just instinctively knew what to play. And of course, we all know the words. I mean, what American worth their salt doesn't know the words to Sweet Home Alabama. At least the at least the chorus is right.
Right.
And so that was like a really cool moment at PhenomeCon. Was one of my favorite moments, was just breaking into that kind of spontaneous, rendition of Sweet Home Alabama. So I can't imagine how awesome that must have been to actually be there in Alabama playing that song with the guys. So
It was
just
pretty fun.
just know that I missed the heck out of you guys. Just I so wish that I could have been there, and
It was weird
just
not having you there. Like even during rehearsals, it was like, yeah, this is a lot of fun, but it felt like something was missing, you know. It just was odd.
yeah, the big fat guy. Where'd he go?
Next to the other fat guy.
uh, well, all I can say, folks, is I I'm planning on being in really good shape for PhenomeCon, and I'm already well on my way. I think I'm down a little over 20 pounds since January, and of
Holy
course
cow.
I've got the new
Great.
smile, so
Yeah.
feeling good, and looking forward to getting back on stage with you, John, and with everybody else in the band. And there's been some talk about writing some original material, which I'm really excited about, and seeing where that goes. And just there's just a really cool synergy that we had last year at PhenomeCon, and I've missed being, whether we're rehearsing or just hanging out or whatever. I mean, there's just such a great chemistry between all of us in the band that it's just so much fun when we get together. And um, I mean, I got to tell you, get with Caleb. I mean, just point Caleb in a direction and let him go off. I mean, he's so much fun to to be around and hang out with. And
It almost should be illegal to have Caleb and Travis in the same room together.
yes, I think it is illegal in at least half a dozen states to
It's probably
have
going to
both
be
of them.
illegal in Vernal after this phenomenon.
I
I'll
I
probably introduce a law.
and I would wear that as a badge of honor because that, oh gosh, the just so many good memories from last year, and I cannot wait to do that again this year at PhenomeCon. And there's talk of another gig that we might be doing in between now and PhenomeCon. So keeping our fingers crossed that comes together as well. Because any opportunity I have to go and hang out with you guys, man, count me in.
Mhm.
I'm there.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
All right, John. Well, let's. I'm sure we've already bored the hell out of the good folks that have tuned in, wanting to hear about all the unexplained stuff and unexplained phenomena. So we'll lay off the music talk for now. But I thought that we just kind of kick things off talking a little bit about this massive quote unquote discovery that ended up being in the news and reported on most of the mainstream media outlets about this discovery of these seemingly artificial structures under the pyramids in the Giza Plateau, right? Um, I mean, I don't even know how to begin to describe the way the images of these things looked. And so, as I've learned to do, if there's one good thing that the UFO and UAP thing has taught me, John, it's to not get too excited when something really, you know, seemingly exciting and earth shattering comes out. I've learned to take everything with a bit of a, you know, grain of salt, I guess you could say, is the polite way of saying it. And when I saw the news break about this, plus another topic that we're going to talk about after the pyramids, my initial reaction a couple of years ago would have been like, holy crap, this is amazing. And I've since learned to be like, okay, that's pretty interesting. Show me the data that supports your finding. And how did you arrive at the conclusion that you're reporting on? And again, we've said it how many times that that's one of the things that for us, anyway, for me personally, I should say, separates Skinwalker Ranch from a lot of the other, paranormal hotspots that are out there because they truly do follow where the data points them to. And with this discovery of there being structures, really bizarre, huge structures underneath the pyramids, um, seemed a little bit too good to be true. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, that seems to be exactly where we're at today, right?
Yeah, I did some digging into it, and I can get into what I learned about how they came up with this, and how they found what they think they found.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think I think it was lacking. I mean, if you want me to get into it, I can. If I'd be happy to explain, how
Right,
they, if maybe now's a good time. So at first I saw, okay, they were using synthetic aperture radar
right.
to image these structures underneath the ground. I thought, well, that can't be true, because that type of radar doesn't penetrate the ground to more than a few meters. So
Right.
I thought there must be more to it than that, because I kind of dismissed it just on that. I'm like, that wouldn't work. I think the maximum depth in under normal circumstances is like 10 to 15 meters, maybe. And this
Yeah.
stuff way deeper than that.
Hmm.
Um, but so I did a little more digging. So what they actually did is they are relying on, okay, so you've got these satellites passing over the Earth,
Hmm.
and the satellites have synthetic aperture radar, which essentially is just radar. It's like a simple, way oversimplifying it. It's like a camera where you've left the shutter open for a little bit, and it's taking multiple images, slices of images, and then uh, using some processing creates like a 3D topology,
Rendering. Yeah.
or this tomography is
Tomography. Yeah.
recreating the
It's
shape of something based on this 3D imagery.
it sounds not too dissimilar from photogrammetry, is it?
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Similar idea. But
Where's Pete Kelsey when we need him?
right, he should have been on here because he could explain it. He knows this stuff. I don't know what the hell I'm talking.
Right.
But it gets even worse with this, right? Because the radar can't penetrate the ground more than a few meters.
Right.
So what they did, here's what they claim to be able to do using this data. Imagine all of the seismic waves and other like urban generated vibrations near the
Hmm.
pyramid.
Hmm.
Imagine them going underneath the ground and creating vibrations through the
Hmm.
structures. Those vibrations make their way to the surface and cause little micro movements, tiny changes in the surface,
Right.
whether it be dust particles on the grains of sand moving, or
Hmm.
the ground, incredibly micro movements, small micro movements that create Doppler shifts in the returns from this radar.
Right.
And they claim to have developed a way to use these Doppler shifts to then later create images of what's underneath the surface simply based on these micro movements on the surface. And as far as I could tell, other people are like, nah. Like other scientists are kind of looking at this going, I don't
Yeah.
know. Because you have even if what they say is true, like maybe the concept is real,
Hmm.
but you're talking about such tiny Doppler shifts that any movement is going to get lost in the noise. Your signal to noise ratio is going to be horrible. Like
Oh
it's just
yeah.
going to be noise. And to
Hmm.
try to separate out what's signal versus what's just noise seems to me like it would be nearly impossible. And it looks like some of the experts that I saw kind of agree that they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it's an interesting idea, but how
Well,
you
and I guess
separate, I don't know.
and
Keep
you and I think you're pretty well spot on. And folks, what I would recommend to you is if you have the chance, our good friend Jeff Freeman just recorded an absolutely fantastic podcast episode a couple of days ago with a name that all of us that are Skinwalker Ranch insiders will be very familiar with, Dr. Jan Franke, the ground penetrating radar, one of the world's, foremost experts on ground penetrating radar. And he gave a very good summation of pretty much what you just said, John.
Should have watched that first.
And it's really, really good. And Jan is somebody who actually has direct access personally to the pyramids over in Egypt. So his perspective is more than just a, you know, uh, academic one. He speaks from personal experience, having been over there and having personal access to these incredible monuments over in Egypt. So, folks, take some time and watch Jeff Freeman, the J Free 906 podcast, the latest episode, and I'll put a link to it in the description below for this episode of The Soul of the Unexplained. But Jan really does a great job of explaining why it's kind of a great example of confirmation bias and sensationalism, and a lot of people that want so desperately to believe in the extraordinary, they're grasping onto science that isn't really, I don't want to say isn't really science, but I think you kind of get the gist of what I'm trying to
It's
articulate here.
unproven.
It's
It's,
unproven,
yeah.
exactly. It's do we have physics that can really truly allow you to arrive at the conclusion that this group from Italy, is it? I think they're from Italy,
I
that,
think
that
so.
came up with this 3D, this truly extraordinary. I mean, folks, it's like something out of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Remember what I just said there, Raiders of the Lost Ark. We're going to go there in just a moment. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean, I saw these images and I'm just like, if you're somebody that just simply reads the headline and you're like, oh, okay, wow, that's pretty extraordinary. Seeing something like that, they finally discovered something truly, awe-inspiring that leaves all these scientists and archaeologists and anthropologists scratching their heads as to how is this massive structure that clearly appears to be artificial underneath the Great Pyramid and the pyramid complex over there in the Giza Plateau, and again, if it seems too good to be true, there's probably a reason for that, and you know, I would love, and this is where I get to put on my Neil deGrasse Tyson hat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying this to be condescending. I'm really not, because I would absolutely love for a story like this to be completely factual, and not only factual, but to be peer reviewed and to have multiple scientists with multiple sensor platforms, multiple disciplines fact checking each other's work and arriving at some kind of, at least even a loose based consensus that yes, this is something that is truly unexpected, extraordinary, and unexplained as to why, what is this? Who built it? Why is it there? What purpose does it serve? And particularly that last question, that's a question we still really can't come to a consensus on as to what are the pyramids themselves? Why were they built? How were they built? With the level of precision that they were built all these thousands of years ago, that we, even with today's technology, we can't really completely replicate with any degree of, you know semblance of what the original constructions were done with. So I was, needless to say, I was disappointed because, of course, you see an extraordinary headline like that getting passed around to, all these news outlets, and you're kind of hoping that there's something to it. And as we've learned, particularly with like the drone flap and all the other stuff that we've seen in recent, months with the UAP phenomenon, there's just an awful lot of, speaking of signal to noise, right? There
Mm-hmm.
is so much bullshit that you have to sift through before you actually find something that really is okay. That's noteworthy. This is something that truly defies mundane and prosaic explanation. And sadly, with this pyramid discovery, in my opinion, we didn't get it. We don't have it.
Yeah,
How
I
about you?
agree. I agree because it not only do they not entirely explain everything about their process, they seem to make some assumptions and don't really explain why they make some of their assumptions, and then they extrapolate conclusions, and they don't entirely explain all of the steps they use to
Hmm.
get to that conclusion from the original starting point, which they
Right.
also kind of made up. So it's
Right.
and it was my understanding that they had previously published something elsewhere that had failed peer review
Mhm.
or something like that. Like it sounds like the rest of the world, the scientific world, isn't that keen on the approach these guys are taking. And it
Right.
also conflicts with, there's another type of tomography called muon tomography. It
Muon,
does
exactly.
penetrate the ground.
Precisely.
And and they've done imaging using that, around the pyramid complex.
Hmm.
And what these guys say they have found conflicts with known physics that we know. We know
Right.
muon tomography works. We know how
Right.
it works. We can rely on it, and it provides a different picture than what these guys have come up with. So yeah,
Right.
at this point,
Yeah.
it's just
It,
nothing there. I don't think there's any reason to suspect they're onto something unless they can develop this idea further and prove it.
yeah. No, and for me, that's one of the things that frustrates me to no end with, I mean, and tell me if you're in the same boat as this, but I have always described myself as an open-minded skeptic, but a skeptic nonetheless. I truly believe that some of these extraordinary claims very, could very well be true. Whether we're talking Skinwalker Ranch, UAP, Sasquatch, you name it. Take your pick. I think that there really is a there with a lot of these phenomena that are out there. And especially when it comes to archaeology, I'm a very big believer that we do not have one bit of the actual big picture of where humanity's origins came from.
Yeah.
I think, we see these reports that are very credible reports of seemingly out of place artifacts being discovered in places where they shouldn't be. Um, the like what we're seeing over in Turkey with what is it, Göbekli Tepe? Is that how they pronounce it?
Hmm.
Where it's completely upsetting the apple cart of what academia has been teaching us about the history of human culture and anthropology for how many hundreds of years, and we're finding out that humanity is very likely a hell of a lot older than we think it is, which I find fascinating. And so there's all kinds of great things to get excited about that are truly compelling discoveries, but you have to really do your homework to sift through again that signal to noise ratio, as it were. And speaking from the standpoint of being an audio engineer and professional music producer, I know all about signal to noise ratio. And if you put that into the realm of what we're talking about with the realm of the unexplained, that's one of the biggest problems is all that signal to noise. All these people that they want so desperately to believe in little green men or little gray men or whatever the case may be, a big you know relic bipedal hominid, right? Roaming through the wilderness of North America and elsewhere in the world. Um, take your pick. We all have certain things that we would love to be able to be true. And some of those things we accept on faith. Some of those things we rely on a little more data to help us, support our beliefs and our theories. And then there are some of us that do have knowledge. Some of us have seen things, we've experienced things. But still, when you're dealing with something like this that has an impact on all of humanity, and that was one of the great things that Jan said during Jeff Freeman's podcast, is that something like the pyramids, it's not something that belongs to the nation and the culture of Egypt. The pyramids are something that belong to all of humanity, right? And so any of these discoveries that are claimed and alleged to be taking place, they belong to all of us. And the implications involve all of us because it deals with where we came from. We don't really truly get a full understanding of who we are unless we have some idea of where we came from, right? I mean, that's a logical position to me, and that's the way that my warped Raider fan brain thinks anyway. Is but unfortunately, there are just a lot of instances like we see in the UAP field where these people just want so desperately for it to be one explanation. That's the only thing that they're allowing themselves to be drawn into is whatever substantiates and supports their own personal bias, if you will. And unfortunately, that's not a scientific method way. It's not a scientific way of getting to quote unquote the truth, you know, and that's why the truth has become increasingly more of a subjective thing to so many people as opposed to really being objective, which is what the truth is supposed to be, right? So
That's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
true globally right now
Yeah,
on a number of topics, right?
on a lot of
And,
topics,
and we
yes.
won't touch those topics right now, but
We
yeah,
will not. No, we
but
won't.
just generally speaking, you're correct that it would appear that actual objective truth has ceased to matter, you know, to a lot of people. I'm not one
Regrettably,
of those people.
regrettably so. Yeah, and
Actual objective truth does
yeah,
matter to me.
and
So, yeah.
let's not parse words here, John, because I there is still a very important place for faith, right? Faith is, you know, you've got to have a modicum of faith, whether you're talking spirituality or really just the relationships that you have with the people around you every day. You have to accept certain things on faith. You know, when you send your children off to school or you know your loved one goes out the door to go to work, you have to have some modicum of faith that they are going to be relatively safe and return to you, right? You have that faith, you have that hope, you have that belief, that desire, if you will. And so faith has its place. It's a very valuable thing to have. But when we're dealing with things like, you know, these alleged archaeological discoveries, there's got to be more than just faith. There's got to be data that backs it up. There's got to be, you know, and again, that's one of the things that pisses a lot of people off about the pace, the seeming snail's pace of the research going on at Skinwalker Ranch is people are expecting to have things all neatly tied up within a 42-minute episode of a television show. And that's just not the way science works. That's not the way real science works. You know, it doesn't happen fast like that because you've got to, you know, you've just got to let the scientific method process play out. And sadly, I think with this pyramid discovery, that was not an example of that happening. Just my own opinion.
Yep, I agree.
And I'm pontificating, so I'm going to shut up and move on. So,
Yep,
remember how I referenced Raiders of the Lost Ark a moment ago?
I do remember. I wonder what
Well,
that's about.
yeah, I wonder what. Folks, there was a story that came out, I believe it was Thursday morning. Um, I'm getting ready to go to work, and all of a sudden my phone just starts lighting up. I'm starting to get all these notifications for X and for some of the other news sites that I subscribe to. And on multiple news platforms, multiple social media platforms, my news feed was getting bombarded by this story of the CIA confirms the existence of the lost Ark of the Covenant. In I think one of the articles, some of the articles were claiming it was in Ethiopia, where it has long been rumored to have resided. And then some of them said, "Oh well, you know, it's they aren't confirming if it was Ethiopia or Saudi Arabia or someplace in the Middle East, right?" So of course, you know, again, it's headlines, and what are headlines designed to do? They're designed to, you know, suck you in basically. And at the end of the day, folks, it was basically, you know, it was, for want of a better word, it was clickbait. I mean, it really was. Now, the story, correct me if I'm wrong, John, because I know I sent you the article and I sent it to Jeff Freeman. And I don't know if Jeff Freeman's ever going to talk to me again because, like, the last two things I've sent him, he's been like, "Okay, Jim, what are you sending me?" You know, because Jeff's like us. You know, Jeff loves to talk about the possibilities of these things and speculate like we do, but he also likes to have, you know, scientific data and stuff to back up these extraordinary claims that are made. So it
Hmm.
turns out that this CIA confirms the existence of the Ark of the Covenant. Apparently, it ties back into the CIA's remote viewing program, right? Presumably, maybe Project Stargate or something. We don't know.
Yeah, it was one of its
Um,
predecessors, Sunstreak. At the time, it was called Sunstreak. It had gone
Sunstreak.
several names. When this happened, it was currently codenamed, Sunstreak. Yeah,
Ah, cool.
same. It's all the same. Girl Flame, Sunstreak. Um, God, I'm losing track of some of the others, but yeah,
Yeah,
there were several of them. But
yeah,
it was Sunstreak at the time, and it was a training target.
right.
It even says right there on the documentation, it's a training target.
Yep. And so the big question, the question that, as soon as I was pulling up the article, I'm like, and then I saw the term remote viewing, I'm like, oh shit, here we go. And I was hoping to see some kind of boots on the ground confirmation, like they actually would send intel operatives or somebody over to actually, verify the target that came up in the remote viewing. And we've all, I mean, I'm not, I believe there's something to remote viewing. I'm not going to dismiss it as, hooey and nonsense. Um, but at the same time, though, where was the verification, right? Where was there any kind of indication that, okay, we had X number of remote viewers concentrating on this target, and out of those, out of that number, here's how many came up with the same, conclusion with their session. And we didn't get any of that data, at least not in the articles that I read. So again, folks, it's this article that's designed to sensationalize. And what upsets me about it is not just the fact that it was a clickbait kind of article. I have a genuine interest, that things, I come from a Christian background. I'm an active practicing Christian, despite my language sometimes. But, I, the story of the Ark of the Covenant, it's something that I read about. And of course, the Indiana Jones thing. I mean, I have to, again, there's that word, I have to accept on faith that that was a real thing, that, spoken about in the Bible. So, where has it been all this time? For these, over 1,000 years, it's seemingly disappeared from the existence, from off the face of the earth. And there's been stories through the years of, I've heard stories, John, that the Knights Templar at one time had the Ark of the Covenant in their possession, and that the one that always seems to be coming back is that there's this sect of Christians in Ethiopia, and they've got like this really kind of cool church or temple kind of thing, and they claim that the Ark of the Covenant is in there. And then, of course, there's stories that the Mormon Church has the Ark of the Covenant in the Salt Lake Temple in Salt Lake City. So there's no shortage of legends and urban myths and stuff like that. And so when you come across something like this, it's designed to to do just what it did. It grabs attention. It's an attention grabbing headline, and more fool me for taking that clickbait. And I feel actually dumber after having read some of the articles. But it's just an example, John, of what is plaguing this overall umbrella of quote unquote the paranormal and the unexplained. Is you have some very legitimate, very credible, very legitimate research being done by very prominent individuals. Lots of money is being invested in the investigation and research of some of these phenomena. And then you have stuff like this come up. This article about the Ark of the Covenant and this discovery underneath the pyramids. And folks, again, it's kind of like the times that I've kind of railed on Stephen Greer for his CE5 thing and just his general the way that he portrays himself. I'm not trying to begrudge anybody that really truly wants to believe or that does believe that these things are true. Again, I would absolutely love to learn that the Ark of the Covenant is real and still resides on this planet. I mean, that would be to me, being a Christian, that would be huge news. That would be pretty darn cool. Just as it would be really cool if, President Trump or whoever came forward and said, yeah, okay, we're not alone. We're not alone in the universe, and okay, we're not alone on this planet. And, I mean, again, I would love for that to happen. But until that happens, it's just another story. And sadly, there are far too many people, using myself as an example, getting suckered in on reading this Ark of the Covenant article. You know, it would be great if stuff like that were actually had some genuine substance to them. And sadly, John, it seems that either by design or otherwise, just people are getting too anxious to want to believe in the extraordinary that they're falling for seemingly almost anything these days. And that's one of the things that's caused me to become a little bit disillusioned. I'm still very much interested, but like you and I have talked in previous recent episodes, it's kind of hard not to get a little jaded about some of the stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely. You're right. This is a perfect example of it. They take something that is interesting. I mean, it's interesting that first of all, it's interesting that we had a military remote viewing project.
Right?
That's kind of interesting,
Hmm.
and finding out more about that is kind of cool. It's
Yeah.
there's a lot of history there that's kind of intriguing.
Hmm.
Um, but then all we really know when you see this document is someone had a training target
Hmm.
and they found something, they experienced something in their session that was intriguing and interesting.
Hmm.
And if the actual target was the Ark of the Covenant, which we don't really know that, we, you know,
Right?
that's what it says the target was. We still don't actually know that was the target. It probably was, but we don't know that, is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Um, some of the information in it seems to match up pretty well with it. Um, that's as far as you can take it.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's an unverifiable remote viewing target. And
Hmm.
the history of remote viewing is littered with unverifiable targets. Like, and someone we know, I believe it was Eric Bard, but someone was like, remote viewing works, but it doesn't provide you any actionable information on its own.
Right.
So this is a perfect example of that. It's like, okay, now what?
Right.
I don't know. We
Yeah.
literally don't know anything more than we did before. So what
Yeah.
was the point? It's
Yeah.
like, so you can verify it other ways. Or like you
Yeah.
said, if you had this was one viewer doing a training target.
Hmm.
If you had a team of viewers, they're all blind. The tasker is, or their monitor is blind, and only the tasker knows what it was. Maybe even the tasker is kind of blind to the target.
Hmm.
And they all tend to kind of agree and their sessions sort of converge on the same type of information.
Hmm.
Now we're talking.
Right.
That's particularly intriguing, right?
Yeah.
Uh, because now you're like, okay, there's something going on here. If you can
Hmm.
verify that none of them knew what the target was, that their monitors were also blind to the target, so they weren't accidentally feeding them information. Um, you know, maybe
Yeah.
we're on to something, but this is a single session, a training target. It's kind of interesting. It verifies nothing. It's unverifiable, you know.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And so the thing that bothers me, John, is that stuff like this doesn't move the needle forward. It sets it back. For people that are trying in good faith to take some of these things seriously, and we'll get there in a moment when we start talking about the recently declassified JFK assassination files and some of the stuff that's alleged to be in there. And so it's like, again, there's so many of us want so badly to believe that these things really are true, but we're still waiting for the data to lead us to say conclusively, yes, this one we can check off the box. It is true. Um, and so far, there hasn't really been any quantifiable, verifiable instances of that being the case with so many of these rabbit holes for the paranormal, whether we're talking Ark of the Covenant or cryptids like Sasquatch and, um, the Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, UAPs, you name it, folks. I mean, there's just so many things that will we ever get that data? We don't know, and that's one of the things that both excites and frustrates. At least for me, anyway. That's how I view it.
Abandon all hope, ye who enter this field. Right?
Yes, pretty pretty much. You
That's
see,
kind of
you see this,
the
folks. When
motto.
I
Yeah.
started 4 years ago, this was completely brown hair, and now look at it.
What'll
No,
happen, man?
don't believe it, folks. Not for a minute. But so moving on to the next one, John. We've also in the news recently for the last 2 weeks. Of course, they finally made good on releasing the overwhelming majority of the files that previously had been classified and redacted, uh, like to the nth degree regarding the Kennedy assassination. And just today, or maybe it was yesterday, of course, Congress, the House of Representatives, formed uh, a committee, if you will, to review the declassification documents and the release to the American public, right? For the JFK files, the Epstein files, the RFK and MLK assassination files, and of course the UAP phenomenon. So Trump signs this executive order within his first week or so of office, where he specifically says he's going to declassify all the documents pertaining to JFK, RFK, MLK, Epstein, and the UFO phenomena, as well as 9/11. Right? Those were the big ones. So here we are, getting ready to start April in just 2 days. The 1st of April is just 2 days away from the recording of this podcast. And the only thing that's been released so far is really of any substance is the JFK stuff. Now, uh, depending on which news site or social media site you're looking at, um, there either is or isn't anything that verifiably, conclusively indicates that Oswald was in fact the lone shooter on, you know, November 22nd of 1963 in Dallas, Texas. So the interesting thing is the Congress person that's in charge of this committee is Representative Luna from the state of Florida. Now, those of us that are UAP folks know that name very well. She is part of the UAP caucus in Congress, and she conducted the last hearing that we had, where Lou Elizondo and Tim Gallaudet testified before Congress. So she makes this announcement. It was either today or yesterday that making this claim that NBC have a video that, according to her, shows pretty conclusively that Lee Harvey Oswald was not the lone shooter, if even the shooter at all. So, based off of the very little information that she put out there with this post that she did on X, or sorry, I still call them tweets on Twitter, but
There
you
will
know,
always be tweets on Twitter.
always, always, always. So again, folks, 62 years, right, since the Kennedy assassination, and we're supposed to believe that NBC has been sitting on this for 62 years. Um, Something about that doesn't, for me anyway, John, and this is just me, maybe because I'm so jaded and cantankerous about it, but it doesn't pass the smell test for me. I
No.
mean, would NBC, one of the major news organizations in the United States, honestly sit on something that big for 62 years only to have it be outed by a member of Congress? Um, it doesn't pass the smell test for me. How about you?
Yeah, unlikely, pretty unlikely. Yeah, I mean, with this type of thing, honestly, I haven't even kept up with the news because my default position lately is that everyone is full of shit.
Pretty much.
It's just kind of, I swear that's just every little bit of news I hear, that's the first thing I think of. I'm like, this is such BS.
Yep.
And I kind of, until I see more data, I'm open to believing it. I mean, there's enough about the original, the official story, I guess you could call it.
Mhm.
There's enough about that that's questionable, right? That I
Mhm.
could see how, this is based on certain pieces of information. This is the story we're going to go with. Maybe the government really knew that wasn't entirely true, but they couldn't get into it, at the time. As far as I'm concerned, if it was that long ago, why is any of it still classified or redacted at this point?
Mhm. Yeah,
It was so long ago. Not a damn piece of this should be classified or redacted still.
I
Like I,
agree.
I don't care what it is. I'm one of those. I'm
Well,
like full transparency. I don't care if they're trying to, let's say it was some conspiracy to kill him. Who
mhm.
cares? All the people involved are dead.
Yep.
Just release the information.
Yeah,
I don't get it. Just
no, I'm right there with you, and
annoying.
it does not make any sense. And for me, again, I guess you would still have to, in the plainest terms, still have to rule it as anecdotal evidence. But I weigh very heavily the testimony of the doctors at Parkland Memorial Hospital that say that the wound to Kennedy's neck was undeniably an entry wound. And there the one, or maybe it was the one in his right temple. They're like, that was an entry wound, and the whole back of his head was gone. And they're saying, all these surgeons that were there that day all came forward, and they never wavered in their testimony, and they all said that the autopsy photos of Kennedy that were shown and released to the public is not the way the head looked when they were there within minutes of the of the shot being taken. So there's a lot of stuff like that, and of course, for me, the Zapruder film still looks to me like that kill shot came from the front,
I agree.
and not from the back. And I've said it before. I grew up in a family that hunted. I hunted animals, when I was a youngster. I mean, I don't do it much anymore because I just simply don't have the time to. And I've seen what a firearm does. I know what ballistics does, and I can tell you, that the way the Zapruder film looks, that does not look like a shot that came from above and behind. Just does not look like it. I don't buy it for a minute.
I
And then
agree.
all the testimony of the people that were down there at street level that said they categorically heard, for a fact, they heard shots that came over from behind the picket fence, not from the school book depository. So I think a very good case has been made through, Oliver Stone's movie, and the one author, Jim something or other. His name escapes his last name. I know it begins with an M. But the whole principle of the triangulation of crossfire, right? It makes the sense, and it would make sense that there would be more than one shooter. So I don't at all discount the possibility. I'm not saying it is, but I don't discount the possibility that Oswald either wasn't the only shooter, or he may not have been in. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't even pull a trigger. I don't think he even had a gun to do it with. I think there's a good chance he's exactly what he claimed he was, which is a patsy. But that's just because I've read an awful lot of circumstantial and anecdotal evidence, which we haven't been able to substantiate because these files have been classified for 62 years. And chances are, let's be honest, if there really was, let's entertain the idea that maybe there really was a plot to kill Kennedy, whether it was the CIA or whatever organization that had rogue elements. And let's say that they did. Do you honestly think that they wouldn't have already destroyed some of those really significant documents? And we already know that some of the documents that were the most crucial were, in fact, destroyed. Like one of the surgeons that was there at Parkland Hospital, he was told to destroy the notes that he made during the autopsy. So that is not at all standard protocol for a, for a surgeon, somebody that's especially involved in a case as high profile as an assassination of a sitting president, right? So there's a lot of things that give you reason to pause and say, okay, there really may be something to this. But part of the problem, John, is that the sheer volume of documents that came out, has anybody honestly had the time to go through and parse through every one of them to say, okay, this may be something worth taking a closer look at? And how much of it is honestly stuff that really is like, why the hell was this classified in the first place? And
Mhm.
but that's also something that we've heard with the UAP thing, is that there's a problem with over classification. They're classifying things that really have no business being classified. And all that it does is it creates that shroud of, what are you hiding from us, right? You wouldn't be
Mhm.
hiding it from us if you weren't trying to hide and cover up some kind of nefarious or, you know, um, some kind of malfeasance, right? So,
Yep.
yeah.
I
So,
agree.
so,
I guess back the original point is we don't know what happened. We still don't know what happened.
yeah,
We're open-minded about what might have happened, but
yeah, yeah,
beyond that,
yeah,
show us the real data. There's
exactly.
the film, show us the film.
And just like with Roswell, because of the amount of time that has passed, the likelihood of us ever really getting, quote unquote, the truth grows less likely with each passing day, and more so with Roswell because it was so much longer ago than the Kennedy assassination was. So, that's the thing about conspiracy land, folks. It leads us to dark places and leads us to dwell on things that really, at the end of the day, take us to places that we really have no business going.
I
And
think a lot of it is people just don't understand how things actually work.
exactly,
It's a saying I've
yeah,
been using a lot recently. I just said
yeah,
it a couple weeks ago.
mhm.
Everything's a conspiracy theory when you don't understand how anything works.
Right,
It's kind of
precisely,
true.
yeah. And I'm not at all going to pretend to even have the slightest faint of a clue how the U.S. intelligence apparatus works, because I've never worked in that particular industry, and it's all just based off of what I read or what I watch in documentaries and or movies and television.
And
So
we know people that have been in that world. That's what's funny.
exactly,
Even offering my entirely uneducated opinion
yeah,
sometimes. It makes me
yeah.
wonder if our friends see us say some of these things and they're like, God,
You
God,
guys are such morons.
exactly. They're
I
figuring
guarantee,
out how
I
this really
guarantee, I
works.
guarantee you, Jay's like, oh
He's
gosh,
like, oh my
there
Lord,
goes Jim
if they
again.
had
Shut
any
him up
idea.
already.
That's my worry is like we have to, that's our
Yeah,
we have to say that like we don't know what we're talking
yeah,
about. We're
yeah.
just a couple of guys offering opinions based on
Well,
what we know, but most of the time
yeah.
we have no experience in this.
Well,
How
and exactly, and I guarantee you, some of those people that work in intelligence would say, well, to you, that it may not make sense as to why something needs to be classified and needs to be, held under that veil of secrecy, but there is a very legitimate reason, and until you've actually been involved in that particular type of environment, you're just not going to understand it, right? Um, and you can apply that same principle to almost any, line of work, almost any, field of interest. If you know, when I was okay, a great example. Okay, if you want to learn about Mormons and what Mormons believe, right? I know. Why would anybody want to know what a Mormon believes, right? Would you go talk to a Catholic priest or a Muslim to learn about the Mormon church? Well, I'm sure they'll give you an opinion. Uh, through their own, the eyes of their own belief system. But if you really want to know what a Mormon believes, go and talk to a Mormon. You want to learn what a Baptist believes? Don't talk to the, Lutheran. Go talk to the Baptist, you know? So it's kind of like everybody has their own, you know, viewpoints. They have their own list of facts that they think that they have that they operate under. And the reality is sometimes we don't really know what we think we know. As much as we like to take pride in the fact that we think we know a lot about something, you know, I'm still learning things about things that I've had great passionate interest in for decades that I'm still learning. I mean, okay, anybody that knows me will say Jim is a walking encyclopedia of music knowledge and particularly 80s pop music and 80s culture, pop culture. I found out for the first time just a week and a half ago that Rick Astley, okay, never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down. I had no idea that not only did the guy play the drums like really well, but he also did this kick ass cover of AC/DC, Shook Me All Night Long, where not only is he playing the drums live, but singing the lead vocal part live as well. I mean,
I had no idea.
Rick
No
Astley,
clue.
boom, I had no idea. So you can still, the old adage, you really can teach an old dog new tricks as long as your mind is open enough to learn them, right? And that's the key. I think that's the key to all this, John, is realizing the more we learn, the less we know, right? Because it's like this thing that I always give Neil deGrasse Tyson and people like him a hard time about, that like to say, well, the science on this is pretty clear and it's settled. And the reality is no, science itself, by its very nature, is never settled because you are always learning new things. We're still learning things about the universe around us. We still live on a planet where how much of the oceans have honestly been mapped and explored, and really truly do we know what's down there in all those deep places in the ocean? And the answer is no, we don't.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
think we do, but again, the more we learn, the less we know. And we've seen that on, how many times have our friends at Skinwalker Ranch said, we're learning some really cool shit, but when we learn stuff, it just raises more questions, and that's kind of, but I think that's kind of the way life is, right? Just when we think we have something figured out, something happens and we realize maybe we don't know as much as we thought we did.
Well, there were physicists. Was it the either the late 1800s? It might have been the late 1800s who said we've basically figured out everything about physics.
Hmm.
There's nothing left for us to learn. And then, bam, Maxwell Heaviside equations. Then uh, Einstein, quantum,
Meanwhile, quantum theory
all these
says,
guys.
here,
Quantum
hold,
physics pops up.
here,
More
hold my
particles start
electrons.
appearing. More particle physics starts happening.
Right. Yep.
Quarks and stuff
Yep.
just gets weirder. But I mean, I hate the phrase "the science is settled" because the science is if it because people like to say, well, scientists, they don't know everything. Well, no, of course they don't. If they did, they would stop doing science.
Hmm.
And no scientist stops doing science. There's always
Right.
something to learn. My only worry is some people say that an excuse to pretend we don't know the things that we do actually already know.
Hmm.
like, like,
Yeah.
like the earth is flat, stuff like that. Like,
Yep.
no, we know this is not true. But
Hmm.
to your point, all we have are theories. And in the scientific realm, a theory is not an idea or our best guess. It's we have observed facts about the world, and we have through testing and the continual process of doing science, we
Hmm.
have developed an explanatory framework for what we observe. That's what a
Right.
theory is. The theory of evolution is not our guess about evolution, it's how evolution works. Atomic theory is not our guess about how nuclear energy works. It's like
Right.
this explains how it works. Theory of gravity is not a guess, although in some cases we don't really know what gravity really is, maybe, but you get my
Hmm.
point.
Yes, completely.
They're just theories. They are
Yeah.
story frameworks that are tested and refined as time goes on. All it takes to completely blow away some a theory is data points that we observe and continually observe that don't match our theory, you
Right.
know? And a lot of times, usually they don't get completely, it's usually like, oh, we need to refine, like Newtonian mechanics, you know, Newton's laws of motion, that stuff for most things,
Hmm.
that's fine. But
Right.
for a lot of other things, you need, here comes Einstein and relativity.
Hell,
It's
hell,
like,
whenever I hear the term that whenever I hear the phrase bodies in motion, I'm like, I think I saw an 80s movie with that title in it, and that wasn't about what I thought it was.
which one? It cut
Body
out.
bodies in motion?
Oh, I don't know. I can neither confirm nor deny.
Right. Wink, wink,
Low
nudge,
Marge,
nudge.
Jim.
Oh, well, John, again, thanks so much for joining tonight. Always a great conversation, and there's still no shortage of great topics to talk about. And folks, don't get discouraged. It's good to have a belief in the extraordinary, because there truly are extraordinary things that are out there that still defy rational explanation. And and I'm not just talking about the Las Vegas Raiders or the Denver Broncos. Um, there are things that are much bigger than that, and it's that curiosity that for me, it's just a never-ending curiosity that I have. I just want to learn some of these mysteries of the universe that are out there, and I think those answers are out there. And I think that in the course of time and with due diligence and following that scientific method, we will at least figure out some of the pieces of the bigger puzzle. We may not get all the pieces, and it may not happen as quickly as we may like and hope it to happen. But again, that's where that hope element comes into play, for me anyway. And if you're somebody that sees these articles about what's under the pyramids, or this article about the Ark of the Covenant, and that gets you excited, hey, there is nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all wrong. And if anything, I'm glad that these stories are getting discussed, because it opens up conversation, right? And that's one of the main reasons why this podcast exists, is to get people talking about this shit, to strip away the stigma of talking about this really weird, esoteric kind of stuff that's out there in the universe. And it used to be taboo for so long for so many people. It was for me for years. I was so never a UFO guy until I was, right? I was never a paranormal experiencer until I was. And John, someday that's going to happen to you.
No, I don't
Someday
know what
you're
else
going to
I
become
can
an
do.
experiencer, pal.
What else can I do? I mean, I could start actively doing rituals and trying to call something forth, but I think
Okay,
I've done everything a reasonable person would need to do.
here's what
Very
we got to do. We gotta put forth this idea. Maybe we can get Hitchhiker together and perform a music experiment out of the triangle while we're all in town
That's a
for
great
PhenomeCon.
idea. Let's start playing different genres and see which ones the ranch doesn't like.
I have a feeling the ranch is probably not going to be too crazy about polka. Just an idea. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
I don't think the ranch is going to dig polka.
I think, yeah,
Acid, acid polka, maybe. Bluegrass polka, definitely. But just good old fashioned polka, I think it may be a stretch too far.
yeah,
Just saying.
I have to agree.
Right on. Well, John, again, thank you so much. Folks, thank you for watching today. And again, we hope you join us in extending thoughts and prayers to Roger and his wonderful wife. We hope that Roger starts feeling better soon so he can join us again. And gosh, if there's a guy that deserves some goodness in the universe, Roger Stokes is that man. And
The
so
guy deserves some good luck for a
he's
change.
He certainly does. So, Raj, we're thinking of you, buddy, and can't
Yep.
wait for you to join us again. And folks, if you liked what you saw and heard today, although I can't imagine why anybody with a sane mind would, but if you did, hit that subscribe button down there somewhere, wherever you see it, and hit that like button if you liked what you saw and heard. And thanks for listening to me, ramble on like I usually do. And thanks for just being you, folks. Thanks for checking us out. And I wish all of you out there a very wonderful week. Hope you guys are enjoying some of the good weather that's out there, and just be awesome. Don't let all the negativity in the world that's out there drag you down, and just try to do something at least once a day to lift somebody up instead of tear them down. Because the world would be a much better place if we could focus a little more on doing that and serving others. And even if it's something as simple as just saying hi to somebody, just smiling at somebody, you'd be surprised how far a little insignificant act like that will go with some people. And I speak
Buy
from
someone some
experience.
tacos.
And yes, tacos, I'm pretty sure that's one of the secrets to the universe of unlocking the key to eternal happiness. It's got to involve tacos in some way, shape, or form. I'm convinced of it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So thanks again, folks. John, thank you again, and go Broncos, buddy. And we'll have to come back on here before too awful long, and maybe we'll get Mr. Hanks to join us again. And
That'd be great.
who knows what kind of madcap shenanigans will happen at that point. But I want to be there when they do.
Absolutely. Yep, me too.
Right on. All right, folks, thanks so much. And we will see you next time if I can figure out where the damn stop button is. I think I found it down there somewhere.
Need to borrow my reading glasses, sir?
Yes, I do. Dang it. I think I need cataract surgery or something. Anyhow, folks, we will see you next time right here on the Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.